Chevrolet LS7 7-liter V8. When Chevrolet introduced the LS7 in the C6 Corvette Z06, it redefined what a naturally aspirated American engine could do. Displacing 7 liters and producing 505 horsepower with 470 pound-feet of torque, the LS7 was the largest small-block V8 ever put into a production car. Despite its size, it weighed less than many smaller European engines, thanks to lightweight titanium connecting rods, sodium-filled valves, and a hand-assembled aluminum block. This wasn't a big block brute disguised as a sports car engine. It was a precision-built machine. Each LS7 was hand-built at GM's Performance Build Center in Wixom, Michigan, with tolerances closer to race engines than road cars. It shared DNA with the C5R Le Mans program, including dry sump lubrication and a red line of 7,000 revolutions per minute, astonishing for a pushrod design. The result was a Corvette that could hang with Ferraris and Porsches on both track and street. The Z06 sprinted from 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds, ran the quarter mile in the 11 seconds, and topped out near 198 miles per hour. On road courses like the Nürburgring, it posted times that embarrassed cars costing twice as much. While Europe obsessed over complex multicam engines and electronic trickery, the LS7 proved that raw displacement, efficient breathing, and old-fashioned engineering discipline could still win. It didn't need turbochargers or exotic materials to dominate, just perfect execution. Even today, the LS7 remains one of the most respected naturally aspirated V8s ever made. Its balance of simplicity, reliability, and devastating performance made the Z06 a true supercar killer, one that forced European brands to take the Corvette seriously for the first time. Dodge Viper 8.4-liter V10. Few engines capture the raw, mechanical brutality of American performance quite like the Dodge Viper's 8.4-liter V10. When it debuted in its final form for the 2008 generation, it produced 600 horsepower, later increasing to 645 horsepower and 600 pound-feet of torque, all from a naturally aspirated setup. No turbos, no superchargers, no electronic gimmicks, just displacement and torque. Derived from an old truck block and refined through decades of racing development, the 8.4-liter V10 became a masterpiece of controlled violence. Its long-stroke design delivered massive mid-range pull, while its unique cross-plane firing order gave it a sound unlike anything from Europe. Deep, guttural, and angry. It could hurl the Viper from 0 to 60 in under 3.5 seconds and pass 200 miles per hour on a straight stretch of asphalt. But the real story was how simple it was. No drive modes, no stability systems, no filters between driver and machine. The Viper demanded skill. It punished mistakes and rewarded precision. On a racetrack, in the right hands, it could outpace Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and even certain Porsches at a fraction of their cost. Despite its lack of refinement, or maybe because of it, the 8.4-liter V10 came to represent the essence of American performance: huge power, brutal honesty, and complete mechanical connection. Even as Europe moved towards smaller, turbocharged engines and hybrid assistance, Dodge stayed defiant. The Viper's V10 remains one of the last great analog power plants. It didn't just compete with European supercars, it overpowered them with sheer will and cubic inches. Ford 427 SOHC Cammer. The Ford 427 SOHC, better known as the Cammer, was Detroit's most serious shot at mechanical domination, an engine so aggressive that NASCAR had to step in and ban it before it could rewrite the record books. Built in 1964 as a direct response to Chrysler's 426 Hemi, the Cammer took Ford's proven 427 FE block and replaced its pushrod setup with an exotic single overhead cam design on each cylinder bank. The result was an engineering masterpiece. The hemispherical combustion chambers, 2.25-inch intake valves, and 6-foot timing chain created an engine that looked as wild as it performed. In factory trim, it produced 616 horsepower at 7,000 revolutions per minute. With dual 4-barrel carburetors and race tuning, it climbed past 650 horsepower. Nothing else in American production at the time, and few engines worldwide, came close. When Ford unveiled it, European manufacturers took notice. The Cammer wasn't a lightweight precision instrument, it was a sledgehammer, disguised as a race engine. It powered dragsters that ran quarter miles in the low 8 seconds and street machines that could humiliate imported sports cars at half the price. NASCAR never allowed it to compete, claiming it offered an unfair advantage. Instead, it became a legend in NHRA drag racing, where racers like Connie Kalitta and Don Prudhomme used it to obliterate record books and rivals alike. The engine's brutal torque and rev range gave Ford a performance edge that terrified the competition. Only a few hundred were built, but its influence was lasting. The Cammer proved that American engineers could combine brute force with advanced design, not just to match European technology, but to surpass it. Even today, the 427 SOHC remains one of the most ferocious engines ever created, a banned masterpiece that defined the boundary between innovation and intimidation. Chrysler 426 Hemi. The Chrysler 426 Hemi stands as the most legendary American engine ever built, the one that earned its nickname, the Elephant, for both its size and its dominance. Introduced in 1964 for NASCAR competition, it was designed with one purpose: total supremacy on the track. At its core was a hemispherical combustion chamber, a design that allowed air and fuel to enter and exit with unmatched efficiency. The 426 Hemi used massive valves, a cross-bolted main bearing system, and a forged steel crankshaft to handle extreme stress. In street trim, it was rated at 425 horsepower, but dyno tests often showed closer to 480 to 500. In race configuration, with higher compression and wilder cam profiles, output soared well past 600 horsepower. In NASCAR, the Hemi's arrival was immediate chaos. Richard Petty drove it to a dominating win at the 1964 Daytona 500, prompting NASCAR to temporarily ban it for being too powerful. It returned after Chrysler offered a detuned street version, the Street Hemi, in production cars like the Plymouth GTX, Dodge Charger, and Cuda. On the drag strip, the 426 Hemi became untouchable. It powered machines like the Super Stock Darts and Barracudas that ran deep into the 10 seconds in quarter-mile times. Even in Europe, where high-revving V12s defined supercar prestige, few could match the Hemi's brutal combination of torque and reliability. It wasn't refined or subtle. It was a hammer, one that beat physics into submission through displacement and design efficiency. The 426 Hemi proved that American muscle could not only compete with European performance, but completely dominate it. More than half a century later, the Hemi name still commands respect, because when Chrysler built the 426, they didn't just make an engine, they created an icon that redefined what power meant. Chevrolet 454 LS6. When Chevrolet unleashed the 454 LS6 in 1970, it built the most powerful big-block engine ever offered in an American production car. This was the peak of the muscle car era, a time when displacement was cheap, gas was plentiful, and horsepower was everything. The LS6 was the ultimate expression of that philosophy. Under its hood sat 454 cubic inches, or 7.4 liters, of pure mechanical force. Officially rated at 450 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque, real output was likely much higher. With 11.2 5-to-1 compression, forged internals, a solid lifter camshaft, and a massive Holley 4-barrel carburetor, the LS6 was built for one thing: domination. Installed primarily in the Chevrolet SS 454, this engine turned a mid-size family car into one of the quickest street machines of its era. Contemporary tests recorded quarter-mile times in the low 13 seconds at over 105 miles per hour. Right alongside Chrysler's 426 Hemi cars, and often ahead of many European exotics of the early 1970s. While Ferrari and Porsche focused on refinement and balance, the LS6 delivered power the American way, through cubic inches and torque that felt endless. It didn't need lightweight construction or high-revving precision. Instead, it overwhelmed the pavement with sheer thrust and the unmistakable thunder of a big-block V8 at full load. The LS6 reign was short-lived. Emissions restrictions, insurance premiums, and the oil crisis quickly ended the golden age of high-compression engines. Production ended after 1971, and Chevrolet never built another factory big block with this level of raw performance. Decades later, the LS6 remains a symbol of unrestrained engineering, the moment when Chevrolet's small-town factory muscle humbled Europe's most exotic machinery. It represented everything that made American performance unique. Power first, questions later. Ford Boss 429. The Ford Boss 429 was one of the most extreme engines of its era, a power plant built not for the street, but to satisfy NASCAR's homologation rules. Introduced in 1969, it was essentially a hand-built race engine disguised as a Mustang option, created so Ford could legally run it on the track. At 429 cubic inches, 7 liters, the Boss 429 featured massive semi-hemispherical cylinder heads, a 4.36-inch bore, and oversized valves that required Ford engineers to modify the entire front end of the Mustang just to make it fit. Each engine was assembled by Carcraft in Michigan, a specialized facility that built fewer than 1,400 examples in total. On paper, the engine was rated at 375 horsepower. In reality, stock versions produced around 375 to 385 horsepower, according to period and modern dyno tests. While the solid lifter camshaft, high-flow heads, and forged internals gave it enormous potential, only race-prepped variants tuned for NASCAR duty pushed beyond 500 horsepower, with some exceeding 600 horsepower on the superspeedways. Compared to European rivals of the late 1960s, the Boss 429 was a different kind of weapon. Ferrari and Porsche were chasing refinement and agility. Ford was chasing domination through cubic inches and airflow. The Boss 429 didn't rely on finesse. It relied on physics. Although its street life was short, the engine's legend endured. It represented the peak of Ford's racing engineering, before regulations and emissions ended the era of unrestricted displacement. Today, the Boss 429 stands as a symbol of American motorsport ambition, an engine that proved brute force and brilliant design could coexist, and that Detroit could build a world beater without apology. Chevrolet LT5, 6.2-liter, supercharged V8. When Chevrolet unveiled the LT5 in 2019, It redefined what an American production engine could achieve. Found under the hood of the C7 Corvette ZR1, this 6.2-liter supercharged V8 produced 755 horsepower and 715 pound-feet of torque, making it the most powerful engine ever fitted to a road-going Chevrolet. At its core, the LT5 was a masterpiece of refinement and brute force. It used an Eaton R2650 supercharger capable of moving 52% more air than the previous LT4 blower, force-feeding the engine with relentless efficiency. The forged aluminum pistons, titanium intake valves, and advanced intercooling system allowed it to deliver full power, lap after lap, without fading. Despite its staggering output, the LT5 retained the traditional pushrod design that defined Chevrolet's small block lineage. That combination, modern technology on a classic architecture, gave it a unique character. It revved cleanly, built torque instantly, and produced a soundtrack that was unmistakably American. In the ZR1, it pushed the Corvette to a top speed of 212 and a 0 to 60 time of 2.8 seconds, numbers that rivaled and in some cases surpassed hypercars from Europe, costing several times more. The LT5's power delivery was linear and violent, yet surprisingly manageable thanks to its precise throttle calibration and robust drivetrain. Chevrolet didn't just build a fast engine, they built a symbol. The LT5 proved that a front-engine, rear-wheel drive American car could play in the same league as McLaren, Ferrari, and Lamborghini. It did it not through exotic complexity, but through relentless efficiency, durability, and torque. The LT5 closed out the front-engine Corvette era with a thunderous statement: raw displacement, executed perfectly, can still destroy supercars built on prestige. Chevrolet LT4, 6.2-liter supercharged V8. The Chevrolet LT4 represented a perfect blend of compact engineering and overwhelming performance. Debuting in 2015, this 6.2-liter supercharged V8 powered cars like the Corvette Z06, Camaro ZL1, and Cadillac CT-SV, and instantly made them serious threats to Europe's best. Rated at 650 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque, the LT4 used an Eaton 1.7-liter supercharger capable of spinning up to 20,000 revolutions per minute. It delivered massive low-end torque while maintaining a wide, flat power band all the way to its 6,600 revolutions per minute redline. The engine's aluminum block, forged internals, and high-flow cylinder heads made it incredibly durable, allowing it to survive both daily driving and sustained track abuse. But what truly set the LT4 apart was its packaging. At just 15.3 inches tall, it was one of the most compact supercharged V8s ever built. That made it ideal for Chevrolet's performance lineup. It could fit under a low hood line and maintain perfect weight balance. Despite its compactness, it generated performance that rivaled or exceeded cars like the Ferrari F12 and McLaren 650S. In the Corvette Z06, the LT4 rocketed from 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds and reached a top speed of 200 miles per hour. In the Camaro ZL1, it transformed a muscle coupe into a precision weapon capable of outpacing European Grand Tourers on road courses. Chevrolet combined traditional small block philosophy with modern supercharging technology to create an engine that was brutally effective and surprisingly refined. The LT4 wasn't delicate or overly complicated, it was engineered to produce supercar numbers reliably, lap after lap. Even a decade after its debut, few engines deliver that much usable performance with such simplicity. The LT4 didn't just challenge European supercars, it exposed how over-engineered some of them had become. Ford Shelby GT 500 5.2-liter supercharged V8. When Ford unveiled the Shelby GT 500 in 2020, it didn't just join the modern supercar conversation, it forced its way to the top of it. Under the hood was the most powerful production engine Ford had ever built. A 5.2-liter supercharged V8 producing 760 horsepower and 625 pound-feet of torque. Codenamed Predator, the engine was based on the architecture of the naturally aspirated 5.2-liter Voodoo from the GT 350, but heavily reinforced and re-engineered to handle immense boost. A 2.65-liter Eaton TVS supercharger sat neatly in the valley of the block, force-feeding air into cylinder heads designed for high flow and thermal efficiency. This wasn't a crude torque monster. It was a finely tuned piece of engineering that delivered relentless, repeatable power. The forged internals, high-efficiency intercoolers, and advanced oiling system made it track-capable right out of the showroom. The engine was paired with a Tremec dual-clutch transmission, the first ever used in a Mustang, capable of lightning-fast shifts that made the GT500 one of the quickest accelerating cars Ford had ever built. On paper, its numbers were staggering: 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds, quarter-mile times in the 10 seconds, and a top speed over 180 miles per hour, all in a car that could be driven daily. What truly made the 5.2-liter GT500 engine special was how it bridged two worlds. It had the civility and responsiveness to cruise comfortably, yet the ferocity to take on McLarens, Ferraris, and Lamborghinis on the track. It wasn't exotic in material or layout, just brutally effective. In an era of downsized turbos and hybrid assists, Ford's supercharged Predator stood as a reminder of what pure internal combustion could still do. It proved that raw American horsepower, executed with precision, could still terrify Europe's best. Dodge Hellcat 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi. The Dodge Hellcat engine didn't just redefine American muscle, it redrew the performance hierarchy across the world. When Dodge introduced the 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi in 2015, it delivered 707 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque, instantly making cars like the Challenger and Charger faster than many six-figure European supercars. The Hellcat was built around the legendary 6.4-liter Hemi architecture, but fortified to handle enormous boost pressures. Engineers equipped it with forged pistons, strengthened connecting rods, and a massive 2.4-liter twin-screw supercharger that gulped air faster than most engines could burn it. At full throttle, it consumed 30,000 liters of air per minute and produced a scream that became its signature. In an era of turbocharged V8s and hybrid systems, Dodge's approach was refreshingly simple, overwhelming, unapologetic power. The Hellcat delivered instant torque and ferocity that few cars could match, launching massive sedans to 60 miles per hour in about 3.4 seconds and running quarter miles in the 10 seconds, straight from the factory. And Dodge didn't stop there. The lineup evolved into the 797 horsepower Red Eye and the 840 horsepower Demon, each pushing the limits of street legality. These engines turned everyday muscle cars into supercar destroyers, often beating Ferraris and Lamborghinis in straight-line acceleration at a fraction of their price. What made the Hellcat special wasn't just the power, it was the accessibility. Anyone could walk into a dealership and buy an engine capable of over 200 miles per hour for less than the cost of a Porsche option package. The Hellcat 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi became an instant classic, a cultural moment in engineering excess. It reminded the world that American horsepower didn't need permission, and when properly unleashed, it could humble Europe's best with ease. Chevrolet LS9 6.2-liter supercharged V8. The Chevrolet LS9 was a declaration that American engineering could stand shoulder to shoulder with the best in the world. Introduced in 2009 under the hood of the C6 Corvette ZR1, it produced 638 horsepower and 604 pound-feet of torque, making it the most powerful production engine GM had ever built at the time. Each LS9 was hand-assembled at GM's Performance Build Center, where skilled technicians crafted it like a race engine. It featured an aluminum block with forged titanium connecting rods, sodium-filled exhaust valves, and a 2.3-liter Eaton supercharger producing 10.5 pound per square inch of boost. The result was an engine that combined brute strength with remarkable refinement. In the ZR1, the LS9 transformed the Corvette into a legitimate supercar. It launched from 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds and reached a top speed of 205 miles per hour, faster than a Ferrari Enzo, at one-fifth the price. The combination of massive torque and lightweight meant it could destroy most European exotics, both in straight-line acceleration and around a racetrack. The LS9's brilliance was in its balance. It wasn't a temperamental powerhouse. It delivered consistent performance with remarkable reliability, able to handle track days without heat, soak, or mechanical stress. The integrated intercooler and dry sump lubrication system gave it endurance that matched its explosiveness. While Europe pursued high-revving V10s and twin-turbo V8s, Chevrolet stayed loyal to what it did best, a compact, supercharged small block that delivered monumental performance without unnecessary complexity. The LS9 ended its run in 2013, but its legacy lived on in every Corvette that followed. It proved that the American formula, displacement, efficiency, and purpose-built engineering could not only compete with Europe's best, but often beat them on their own stage. Ford Coyote 5-liter V8 Gen 4. The fourth-generation Ford Coyote 5-liter V8 is a modern masterpiece of naturally aspirated engineering. Introduced for the 2024 Mustang, it represents the evolution of Ford's modular V8 lineage, a perfect balance of heritage, technology, and raw performance. Rated at 480 horsepower in standard form and up to 500 horsepower in the Dark Horse model, the Gen 4 Coyote is the most powerful production 5-liter V8 Ford has ever built. It achieves this without forced induction, relying purely on advanced airflow management and meticulous engineering refinement. At its heart are dual throttle bodies, a first for the Coyote platform, allowing greater air intake and instant throttle response. Ford combined direct and port fuel injection, ensuring both efficiency and power across the rev range. The compression ratio was bumped to 12:1, and the camshaft profiles were revised to increase high revolutions per minute breathing. Paired with continuously variable valve timing, TVCT, and lightweight forged internals, the Gen 4 engine revs freely to 7,500 revolutions per minute with remarkable smoothness. Despite its advanced design, the Coyote retains its mechanical soul. It delivers the kind of naturally aspirated throttle feel that even high-end European V8s have mostly abandoned. The sound, crisp, metallic and urgent, is unmistakably Mustang. Compared to turbocharged European rivals, the Coyote wins through simplicity and engagement. It doesn't need complex hybrid systems or turbo boost to create excitement. It provides instant, linear power and rock-solid reliability, making it both a daily driver's dream and a track day weapon. The 2024 Coyote stands as proof that traditional V8 performance still has a place in the modern world. It blends old-school muscle with cutting-edge engineering, a combination that keeps Ford's 5 at the forefront of naturally aspirated power, even as much of the world moves on from it. Chevrolet ZL1 427 all-aluminum V8. The Chevrolet ZL1 427 is one of the most extraordinary engines ever produced in Detroit, a purpose-built racing motor that somehow made its way into a handful of street cars. Developed in 1969, it was essentially an all-aluminum version of the L88 Big Block, created for Can-Am competition but offered through Chevrolet's COPO, Central Office Production Order program, to homologate it for production. Under its lightweight aluminum block and heads, the ZL1 used forged pistons, a solid lifter camshaft, and a 12-to-1 compression ratio. Officially, it was rated at 430 horsepower, but that number was deliberately understated. Real output exceeded 500 horsepower, in a factory car that weighed nearly 100 pounds less than a small block-equipped Camaro. The ZL1's combination of brute strength and reduced weight made it an absolute weapon. Installed in the ultra-rare 1969 COPO Camaro, only 69 built, it delivered quarter-mile times in the low 11-second range with minor tuning, outperforming nearly every exotic sports car of its day. Despite its racing pedigree, the engine maintained remarkable reliability. It featured a dry sump oiling system and heavy-duty internals capable of sustained high revolutions per minute operation. It was as close to a race engine as Chevrolet had ever sold to the public, and it came with a price tag to match. The ZL1 option alone nearly doubled the cost of a base Camaro. European supercars of the late 1960s couldn't keep pace. Ferraris V12s and Lamborghinis V8s produced barely 350 horsepower, while the ZL1's sheer torque and acceleration made them feel tame by comparison. The Chevrolet ZL1 427 was raw, loud, and unapologetically overbuilt. It wasn't built for luxury or refinement, it was built to win. And, more than 50 years later, it remains a symbol of American engineering excess. Lightweight, brutally fast, and far ahead of its time. Ford 428 Cobra Jet. The Ford 428 Cobra Jet was built for one purpose: to dominate the quarter mile and remind everyone that Ford could outgun both Detroit and Europe when it wanted to. Introduced in 1968, it took the already potent 428 Police Interceptor block and reworked it into a torque-heavy monster built for performance rather than civility. Officially rated at 335 horsepower, the Cobra Jet's real output was much closer to 410 to 425 horsepower. It featured 735 cubic feet per minute, Holley carburation, a functional ram air system, high-flow heads, and 10.6-to-1 compression. It wasn't a high-revving screamer, it was about brute force, delivering massive torque across the rev range that could shred bias-ply tires with ease. In its first public showing at the 1968 NHRA Winter Nationals, the Cobra Jet-equipped Mustang stunned spectators by running the quarter mile in the 13-second range, immediately earning credibility as Ford's top performance weapon. The engine found its way into Mustangs, Fairlanes, and Torinos, making even heavy intermediate cars capable of humiliating lighter European sports machines. What made the Cobra Jet special was its balance of accessibility and aggression. It wasn't an exotic, hand-built engine. It was built on Ford's assembly line but engineered to compete with purpose-built race motors. Its blend of street manners and race potential turned the Mustang into a genuine performance icon. While European automakers chased high-revving precision and mechanical elegance, Ford's approach was straightforward: build displacement, optimize breathing, and let torque do the talking. The result was an engine that delivered relentless, effortless power at any speed. By 1970, tightening emissions and insurance costs began to choke out big block performance. But for a brief moment, the 428 Cobra Jet was the king of the streets, a symbol of the American muscle philosophy executed perfectly. Dodge 440 six-pack. The Dodge 440 six-pack was the perfect embodiment of late 1960s American muscle: enormous displacement, simple engineering, and devastating performance. Introduced in 1969, the 440 six-pack combined brute torque with affordability, offering near Hemi performance at a price the average driver could actually pay. At its core was Chrysler's 440 cubic inch RB block, V8 fitted with 3 Holley 2-barrel carburetors, hence the six-pack name. Factory rated at 390 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque, real-world output was often higher. The center carb handled normal driving, while the outer two kicked in at full throttle, unleashing a rush of power that pinned drivers to their seats. The engine debuted in the 1969 Super B and Roadrunner, then later appeared in cars like the Charger and GTX. It quickly earned a reputation as the best balance of price and performance in Mopar's lineup. With proper tuning, six-pack cars could run the quarter mile in the mid-13-second range, just a few tenths behind the far more expensive 426 Hemi machines. The 440 six-pack's charm was in its accessibility. It didn't require the delicate tuning or racing pedigree of the Hemi. It simply worked, day after day, mile after mile. Its broad torque curve made it brutally fast from a stop, and its triple-carb induction setup gave it an unmistakable growl when all barrels opened. European sports cars of the time relied on precision and lightness. The 440 six-pack relied on sheer force. Few engines of the era could match its combination of power, reliability, and price. Production ended in 1971 as emissions and insurance restrictions took hold, but for a brief, glorious window, the 446 pack represented the peak of attainable American performance, a brawny, carbureted powerhouse that could humble exotics on raw speed alone. Chevrolet L88 427. The Chevrolet L88 427 was one of the most hardcore engines ever to come out of Detroit, a factory race motor thinly disguised as a street option. Built for the Corvette and Camaro between 1967 and 1969, it wasn't designed for comfort, convenience, or even daily drivability. It existed for one purpose: to dominate competition. At its core was a 427 cubic inch big block V8 with aluminum cylinder heads, a forged rotating assembly, and a staggering 12.5:1 compression ratio. It used a massive 850 cubic feet per minute Holley carburetor and required 103 octane race fuel just to run properly. Officially, Chevrolet rated it at 430 horsepower, but that was intentionally understated. In reality, the L88 made over 560 horsepower at more than 6,000 revolutions per minute, putting it far beyond any European rival of its era. Chevrolet even discouraged casual buyers from ordering it. The L88 came with no radio, no heater, and mandatory heavy-duty options like a close-ratio Muncie transmission and transistorized ignition. It was loud, temperamental, and brutal, but on a racetrack, it was nearly unbeatable. The L88's dominance extended beyond American shores. At Le Mans and Daytona, the engine powered racing Corvettes that competed successfully against Ferraris and Porsches, proving that American engineering could hold its own on the world stage. In an age when Europe prized refinement and balance, the L88 was the polar opposite, a violent surge of torque and horsepower that made no compromises. It was the pinnacle of Chevrolet's big block development, a combination of simplicity, strength, and raw aggression that outperformed many of the world's most sophisticated sports cars. By the time production ended in 1969, only a few hundred L88s had been built, but their legacy defined what a true American supercar could be: fast, loud, and utterly fearless. Chevrolet LT1 6.2, lighter V8. When Chevrolet launched the LT1 in 2014, it marked the perfect blend of modern technology and classic small block philosophy. As the heart of the C7 Corvette Stingray and later the Camaro SS, the LT1 delivered 455 horsepower and 455 pound-feet of torque, numbers that placed it squarely in the performance realm of European exotics at a fraction of the cost. At its core, the LT1 carried on the DNA of Chevrolet's legendary V8 lineage, but brought it into the 21st century with precision engineering. It featured direct fuel injection, variable valve timing, and active fuel management, all integrated into an aluminum block that maintained the compact size and light weight that made small blocks famous. The result was a powerplant that delivered instant low-end torque while remaining efficient and responsive. It produced a broad, flat torque curve, unlike many high-strung European engines that required constant revving. In the Corvette, the LT1 propelled the car from 0 to 60 in just 3.8 seconds, while returning over 25 miles per gallon on the highway, proving that efficiency and performance could coexist. Chevrolet's design focus wasn't on over-engineering, it was on execution. The LT1's simplicity made it robust, easy to maintain, and endlessly tunable, earning it a reputation among enthusiasts as one of the best balanced V8s ever built. European competitors like Porsche's Flat Sixes and BMW's turbocharged V8s might have offered refinement, but few could match the LT1's raw usability. It was dependable, affordable, and powerful, the essence of American performance distilled into modern form. A decade later, the LT1 remains proof that Chevrolet didn't need forced induction or exotic materials to challenge the world's best, just precision, displacement, and the unmistakable heartbeat of a small block. Chevrolet LS3, 6.2-liter, V8. The Chevrolet LS3 marked a turning point in modern American performance, a naturally aspirated engine that delivered supercar-level power with the reliability of a commuter car. Introduced in 2008, it powered the C6 Corvette, the fifth-generation Camaro SS, and numerous high-performance specialty builds, becoming one of the most beloved small blocks ever made, displacing 6.2 liters and producing 430 horsepower, or 436 horsepower, with the optional dual-mode exhaust. The LS3 was a near-perfect evolution of the LS architecture. It featured rectangular port cylinder heads derived from the LS7, a high-lift hydraulic camshaft, and lightweight internals that allowed it to rev freely to 6,600 revolutions per minute. The result was an engine that felt both refined and ferocious, smooth at idle, yet explosive when unleashed. What made the LS3 remarkable wasn't just its performance, but its accessibility. It combined simplicity with precision engineering, using proven pushrod technology enhanced by modern materials and computer-controlled ignition and fueling. It provided instant throttle response and a broad, flat torque curve that made power everywhere in the rev range. In the C6 Corvette, the LS3 delivered 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.1 seconds and a top speed near 190 miles per hour, putting it directly in competition with cars from Porsche, Aston Martin, and Ferrari, at a fraction of the cost. Beyond production cars, the LS3 became a favorite in the tuning and restomod world for its compact design, durability, and affordability. It could be tuned to deliver 500-plus horsepower with minimal effort while still retaining street manners. The LS3 embodied everything that made the small block legend endure: reliability, responsiveness, and massive performance without unnecessary complexity. It proved that even in a world obsessed with technology, raw displacement and smart engineering could still crush European precision. Ford 4.6-liter Terminator Supercharged V8. The 4.6-liter Terminator engine used in the 2003 to 2004 Mustang SVT Cobra was one of Ford's most feared powerplants, a supercharged, overbuilt small-displacement V8 that shocked both European and domestic rivals. Developed by Ford's Special Vehicle Team, SVT, under the codename Terminator, the engine was designed to prove that modular V8s could produce big block performance. At its heart was a 4.6-liter DOHC aluminum block, cast in Italy by Texid, the same foundry that supplied Ferrari. Topping it was an Eaton M112 Roots-type supercharger producing 8 pound per square inch of boost, pushing output to 390 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers only told part of the story. The Terminator engine was massively underrated. Independent dyno tests routinely showed 420-plus horsepower at the crank, and with minor pulley or intake upgrades, the car easily produced 500-plus. Its forged crankshaft, manly connecting rods, and pistons made it nearly indestructible, capable of handling over 700 horsepower on stock internals, a figure that rivaled contemporary Lamborghinis and Ferraris. What made the Terminator special was its dual personality. It was civilized enough for daily driving yet violent when provoked. The instant torque from the supercharger, combined with a heavy-duty Tremec transmission, turned the Cobra into a street legend. Against European sports cars of the early 2000s, the Terminator held its own and often surpassed them in raw acceleration. It lacked refinement, but it didn't need it. Its mission was clear: deliver brutal, accessible power with bulletproof reliability. 2 short years were enough to cement its legacy. The Terminator 4.6-liter wasn't just another Mustang engine. It was Ford's mechanical statement that American muscle could match, and often outmuscle, the world's best. Chevrolet LT6 5.5-liter DOHC V8. The Chevrolet LT6 represents the ultimate evolution of the American V8, a naturally aspirated engine so advanced and powerful that it rivals the best from Ferrari and McLaren. Debuting in 2023 in the mid-engine Corvette Z06, it's the most powerful naturally aspirated production V8 ever built, producing 670 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque without a single turbo or supercharger. At 5.5 liters, the LT6 is a clean-sheet design. It abandons the traditional pushrod layout of previous small blocks in favor of a dual overhead camshaft setup with 32 valves and a flat plane crankshaft. This design allows it to rev to an astonishing 8,600 revolutions per minute, giving it an exotic, high-pitched scream, more reminiscent of a Ferrari 458 than any previous Corvette. Chevrolet engineered the LT6 with motorsport-grade materials and precision. The forged titanium connecting rods, lightweight pistons, and dry sump oiling system come straight from endurance racing experience. Its short-stroke architecture and advanced breathing deliver both instant throttle response and incredible high-end power. On track, the LT6 transformed the Coyote Z06 into a legitimate European supercar rival. It accelerates from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 2.6 seconds, pulls to 190 miles per hour, and sustains lap after lap without losing performance, a testament to its durability and engineering sophistication. The most remarkable part? It remains unmistakably American. While Europe achieves its power through turbos and hybrid systems, Chevrolet did it with precision machining and old-school displacement, perfected through modern science. The LT6 is more than just an engine. It's a statement. It proves that even in an era of electrification, a naturally aspirated V8, built in America, can still challenge and even surpass Europe's finest machines on sound, character, and pure mechanical excellence.